Hello! Welcome back to Boxes and Bubbles, where today we're looking at That Texas Blood number 10, published by Image Comics. This one is by Condon and Jacob Phillips. This is an issue that you can, and I would definitely say should, read, regardless of if you've read the rest of the series. The reason for that is twofold. First, the first 6 issues covered one incident, and from issue 7 we've been looking at a different set of events. If you didn't read the previous ones, you'll get the story from context in this issue with no problem. Whether you are reading it or not, this review won't spoil anything for you because the plot doesn't actually advance at all in this issue. What it does instead is examine the story that we already know from a different angle, and does some incredibly effective and succinct character building. This is a perfectly crafted issue of a comic book, and it's an emotional roller coaster, going from warm to devastating to funny, and then leaves off at a cliffhanger. So it's got me buzzing on 2 levels here. One, it's an excellent read, but if we go beyond that, I'm in awe of the writing in this issue. To be able to fit in all of these story beats and moments into one issue of a comic book, and to have it not feel rushed or bloated, and for it to read this well, it's like pure magic to me. This is beyond, I enjoyed reading this. This is more like, how did you get this so perfect? Like, perfect. That Texas Blood is a series which has consistently been good from the start, and its main protagonist, Joe Bob, was humorous and likable from the get-go. At the beginning of the series, while there was a homicide investigation plot going on, there was also a subplot between Joe Bob and his wife, which centered around a borrowed casserole dish. It quickly became apparent that Joe Bob likes to trail off, saying, well, and that considering that he is 70, he's been the sheriff for quite a while. Since issue 7, we've been looking back on a case Joe Bob worked on in the 80s. Children had been abducted and sacrificed to what had appeared at first to be a satanic cult, but was later found to be a Mayan cult by Harlan Eversole, a private detective with a reputation for being weird. This issue opens on the young Joe Bob hanging out with some kids in a backyard. A pair of siblings are playing, and the brother is pointing a finger gun at his sister. Joe Bob asks him, "You got a permit for that thing?" To which the boy replies, "I'm a cop, like you." Joe Bob goes on to explain very sweetly and very simply that guns aren't toys, and that you're just as well off wrestling your opponents anyway. He roughhouses with them, and we see their smiling faces laying in the grass before we get this powerful gut punch of a transition. In my enjoyment of the cute scene, I had totally not been thinking about the story this comic book had been telling previously. I forgot that these siblings were among the victims of the Mayan cult. The boy is dead, and the girl is missing. This page and this sudden, stark transition is something that only a comic book can do, and it works so perfectly. This page was so powerful and heartbreaking. It's a good indicator for how the rest of this issue is going to go, how our perspective is about to change. Previously, we'd been following the cops trying to look into this case. This issue focuses in on the victims and their families, and the tone of the book completely changes, from a cop action murder mystery to an emotional drama, as we can see here on the next page when the children's mother identifies the body of her son. The sheriff feebly attempts to console her by saying that the funeral home will take good care of him, but Joe Bob cuts him off, raising his hand and saying, "I'll take her home." It's a subtle illustration of how distant the police can become from the victims of crime, and it speaks to Joe Bob's kindness that he recognizes that the sheriff, while trying to help, is really doing more harm than good. He leads the mother away from the situation. Back at her house, he tells her about the state of the investigation, the leads and the ideas they're chasing up. The mother, understandably, is distraught about her loss, but also about the way the investigation is being handled. The entire thing is incredible and just so well written, but the most important parts of it for our review are these. And you come in here acting like you're doing work, but you're sitting in here telling me nothing but ideas and thoughts y'all had. The only thought going through my head is whether I gotta bury 1 child or 2. And, referring to her daughter, who is still missing, she's waiting for you. She's probably scared for her life, but she's waiting on you, Joe, and you're sitting here, on ideas and leads like the rest of them. Once again, to Joe's credit, he takes her speech to heart and realizes that she's absolutely right. He ought to be out looking for the girl, not sitting at her mother's house drinking tea. He approaches the sheriff, with Eversole, who recently realized that the tattoo they'd seen on a cult member was actually Mayan, and that the upcoming equinox would likely be a time for them to be performing rituals, therefore suggesting that the girl may still be alive but might be sacrificed on that night, meaning that the situation is time-sensitive. But the sheriff is having none of it, citing an old case where outside help had been relied upon and ultimately led to disaster. Joe decides that if Eversole can't work with the police, then he'll just work with him on his own. The two discuss their next steps and decide to go back to the house the bodies were found in. Making their way there, they chat and get a feel for each other. Just before they enter the house, they have this nice back and forth. Hey, what's wrong? Something's funny, I don't know. I just get the feeling that it will be like Butch Cassidy. What do you mean? Outgunned, nowhere to run. Pfft, I'm always outgunned. Hasn't stopped me. What do you mean? I don't use guns. I just try to be real nice and hope they won't shoot. Heh, I like you, Mr. Eversole. Likewise, Joe Bob. Likewise. Now, ready? Afraid so. They head inside and it's pitch dark. Joe Bob gets a fright when he comes upon something in the darkness and he yells out. Eversole runs in to back him up, and turning the light on, they both realize it had been a statue all along. The two share a long laugh together. Something about this made me really like the pair of them, sitting there giggling like crazy, probably from relief in the middle of a terrifying situation. They don't keep laughing all night though, but if you want to know how it ends, yep, cop it for yourself. No pun intended. So I was just floored by the writing in this issue. Wyona's grief-stricken but completely reasonable outburst, in which I could feel every word, Joe Bob's realization and his change of course, and the start of what seems to be like a friendship and a partnership between Joe Bob and Eversole, followed by a cliffhanger ending. All this with perfectly smooth pacing, not a moment's downtime, and even through the longer moments of dialogue, nothing felt cramped or bloated. I love when dialogue is written so well that it can just take center stage and keep you hanging on every word. I can't imagine how difficult that is to do. I hope this budding friendship continues in the book for a while, but given that Eversole hasn't made an appearance in the present, I wonder and worry about what will become of him. So another one that's a little bit heavy, but the excellent writing in this one really had me buzzing and excited to make a video and talk about it. That's all for this time though, but if you want to see some other spoiler-free reviews of comics that came out recently, make sure to check out the rest of the channel, and follow along at Boxes Bubbles on Twitter to hear about a whole bunch of other comic books that I didn't have time to make videos for. That's all for today, but I'll see you again next time. Bye bye!